The hardest tournament to evaluate players is the World Championship. Each player leaves it all on the ice every single game. 5 players in the top 10 of scoring in the 2022 tournaments don't even have an NHL contract. So using this to project what a player can do on a smaller ice surface against the best competition in the world is nearly impossible to do. However, it still can be fun. The Montreal Canadiens were well represented at this year's tournament. Josh Anderson, Yoel Armia, Sean Farrell, and Jordan Harris all suited up for their respective countries. So knowing all that information, I'm going to do exactly what I said never to be done. And that is use the 2022 IIHF World Championship to evaluate what we can expect from Yoel Armia and Josh Anderson. These two players happen to be two of the most controversial in the Canadiens organization. A good chunk of the fan base loves them, others cannot stand them. And I'm on the side where I'm indifferent about Josh Anderson at the moment, but I still believe Yoel Armia has a chance to be a productive bottom 6 player in the National Hockey League for the Montreal Canadiens. So that's where I stand on these two players going in to get any bias out of the way. And now, let's hop into actually evaluating. We'll start off with Yoel Armia, who represented Finland at the tournament. Finland would win gold, taking on Canada and upsetting Josh Anderson and company. Armia finished with 8 points, 5 goals in 10 games, and he's going to be playing a primary role on the bottom 6 for Montreal coming up. He is signed at a $3.4 million annual average value, so nothing that completely breaks the bank for him, and that's pretty good value for a bottom 6 player of his caliber. But I think it's important to have him with the right line mates. Last year in the playoffs, he had a huge role on the 4th line alongside Eric Stahl and Corey Perry, and was one of the best players that Montreal had in that cup run, especially in the Vegas series. He did not produce much, but his penalty killing role against Winnipeg helped power them over the hump and sweep their Canadian counterparts. So in a bottom 6 role for Armia, I believe he can produce very well. I don't think he is going to be a great player. I don't think he's going to reach maybe even 20 points this season. However, if he can play his role the way that he did in the playoffs during the cup run for Montreal, I believe he is still valuable and worth keeping on the roster. I don't know if you can say the same for the other player that we were talking about in this video, Josh Anderson. I'm very indifferent about Anderson, as I mentioned earlier. I think he has a lot of potential, but he is very hot and cold. Same with Armia. With Anderson, he is put in the right situations to succeed day in and day out. He's playing with the likes of Caulfield and Suzuki for a majority of his ice time, and he's getting the top 6 opportunities. He's making $5.5 million, and he had almost the exact same stat line as Armia with 8 points in 10 games. And for a player that is on the opposite side of the spectrum for the Canadiens, that could be disappointing, especially since he was playing with 2 of Canada's most promising players in Dylan Cousins and Matthew Barzal. During the regular season for the Canadiens, Anderson did not produce at the level that they would expect from the top-line winger. However, there were some signs of improvement. His physical game continued to impress while he still was able to put some points on the board. He had 13 assists and 19 goals for 32 points in 69 games. Although that should be higher, when you look at how Montreal played this year, you really can't expect very much more from anyone on their team. What happened with Suzuki and Caulfield was simply because of the coaching change and how much that benefited them with ice time and responsibility. Anderson needs to take that leap and take on some of that responsibility. He has not been a power play threat, and that's an area that Montreal clearly needs some help. His cycle offense has been quite weak. However, there has been some moments where he has been able to put some passes onto the tape of his teammates and allow opportunities. A player with his size and stature, he can take up a lot of the ice and create some room for everyone else. He doesn't use it the right way though. His analytical numbers have not been great, but as I said, that could have something to do with the regime of Dominic Ducharme. For a power forward, you would expect his rush offense to be extremely strong. That is not the case though. His analytical numbers have not been all there, and all what they should be for the Canadiens' power forward. You can tell when you're listening to Kent Hughes talk, analytics are starting to become more of a topic for every team in the NHL, but specifically Montreal. Hughes said that they want to build off of that and allow their players to be put in the best situations possible using analytics to create the lines and more strategies for their team. As you can see in this visual from Fan on Twitter, link in the description to his account, his numbers analytically have not been very great. There are not very many things that stand out on this page. Obviously, there is more to it than just analytics, and his points were also not all there, and they weren't great, but there is a lot to build off of for Anderson. With that said, his name has been coming into trade rumors in the last few months, and there is a strong chance that if Montreal can find a suitable partner, they will be able to get rid of that contract and hopefully turn it into something more positive for the team going forward. It's nothing against Anderson, it's just that with Montreal being in a rebuild, he would not be a player that I would want to build my squad around. You're hopefully adding Shane Wright to the roster this year, and whoever else you can score in the draft, so getting some more picks and prospects and any draft capital in the next few years, with 2023 being one of the strongest drafts we have seen in a very long time. It is going to be in Montreal's best interest to get rid of him if there is a suitable partner for the right return. If not, I expect Josh Anderson to be a decent middle six piece for the Canadiens this upcoming season and hopefully be able to produce if he's on the right line. He's been put with Suzuki, but unless it is a Suzuki, Drouin, and Anderson line, it has not worked out well. You need to have a mix of everything on the lines, and I think that Montreal has a lot of players that have a similar playing style to Anderson, so that makes him a little bit less valuable. As we've talked about already, Armia is a similar player, but he has the role that Anderson probably should be taking on to develop his game more. We see every year him maturing with his decision making, and he is improving for sure. I wasn't high on him last year in the playoffs, but I saw some signs that he could build off of in this upcoming season, but I'm not sure if that's going to be with the Montreal Canadiens. I all around believe that Armia is the player that I would keep over Josh Anderson, just because he'd be able to put in a sheltered role, and with one opportunity with the right players, I think the Marty St. Louis offense would benefit him more so than Anderson. With the direction that the Montreal Canadiens are moving in, I think that these two players are going to be a part of this offseason and play a huge role. Both of them could be on the move, but both of them could play a big role and facilitate the offense as you are adding more young players next year and bringing in veteran presence like Evgeny Dadonov, and hopefully you can see players like Mike Hoffman take another step in the right direction if he remains with the team. But in a rebuilding situation, which I'm hoping the Canadiens take, I don't know if either of these players have an extreme role on the team. And there's not much to take from the IIHF 2022 World Championship other than the fact these players are fun to discuss, and you can't predict how one is going to do, as it depends on the quality of teammates, who they're going against, and really just the situation that they're playing in for the Canadiens. And I'm excited to see what Marty St. Louis does in a full season, and hopefully both these players can take a better step in the right direction going forward. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.